having seen what I've learned over the last few years, the high year-round tourism is extremely important.
Yep.
You've got to have a reason to have guests showing up throughout the whole year. And there are, from what I can tell, a fairly limited number of places like that throughout the country.
Mm-hmm.
Most places have a pretty dramatic seasonality to them. So make sure that that's number one on your list. Hey, welcome back to the VIP Financial Education YouTube channel, where we help you go further, faster financially while remaining safe in the process. So tell me, what are you hoping to get out of today's conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of came across you searching YouTube videos. I'm very new into the short-term rental space. It's something I'm looking to get involved into. So the model that I've kind of stumbled across and shown the most interest in is Airbnb arbitrage. So, similar to the normal process of where you own the property and you list it, this would be, instead of owning, you lease it, and you set up an addendum with the landlord allowing for short-term rentals. So just kind of going through some stuff on the internet, I saw that you did a YouTube video. It seemed like it was a call going over some of the top short-term rental markets within for 2023. And I think you highlighted Orlando in particular. So I'm really just curious, as a beginner to this, kind of the process that you go about that when you are looking at what markets that you might how to kind of narrow in on a market. What are some of the key things that you're looking at? And really just, I'm kind of I'm a sponge and looking to soak up any sort of information that you might be able to assist me with, just trying to kind of go in as informed as I can. I've kind of started the process a little bit, but still in the very, very early stages.
All right, I can appreciate that. So the first thing that I'd love to talk about, just to kind of prep you for the conversation, I like to get as much information from you as I can.
Sure.
I'll probably ask you some information regarding yourself, where you stand financially today, some of your both short and long-term objectives. All of that will be applicable in the model you're describing.
Mm-hmm.
Arbitrage, in my opinion, is a fantastic concept. I love the idea of minimizing the risk of any new business, short-term rentals included. The first short-term rental property that I was involved in and still am was an acquisition of my own. So it cost a lot of money to put a 20% down payment into the property. It costs a lot of money to furnish and decorate the property. And of course, I'm responsible for everything that happens throughout. And the arbitrage model reduces that upfront barrier of entry because it eliminates that acquisition aspect. So you don't have the down payment and the closing costs. You're still responsible for the furnishings and the decor. And one thing that I've discovered since purchasing my own and managing it for the last few years is the partnership concept is the next level between acquiring your own and the arbitrage. So it actually will give you the more advanced approach where the homeowner adopts the responsibility of the decorations and the furnishings. You're also not committing to the lease. You're actually going in as a partnership split. You're responsible for the day-to-day heavy lifting. It creates a passivity for the homeowner, but they're obviously the ones that are committing to making that property guest ready. So I would certainly encourage that. And it's something I'm happy to text you about. I've actually featured a couple on the channel a number of times, Michael and Katrina Stead out of Canada, who, from what we can tell, have been extremely involved with pioneering this concept. They began in arbitrage and really started to negotiate that difference with the homeowner after doing a couple of deals themselves. And they've taken it even a step further, where they now work in an invoice for design work too. So we really follow that plan. And I've said from the moment I first met them that if I could go back and start the short-term rental business that I have over again, or if I were to lose everything by way of all of my other businesses and revenue streams, I would be focusing my attention on their model. And after a couple of years of really featuring their conversations on our channel and showcasing what they do and bringing in various people who've participated in their membership, because they do sell a step-by-step coaching, if you will, of exactly how this works, that I would do that. And starting last year, December, that's exactly what we did. So I've just surpassed my first year. We didn't acquire our first property. By acquire, I mean put under contract our first property with a homeowner until May. And since then, we're now on track to have somewhere in the range of about 25 doors under management by the end of this month. So it's gone very, very well. We focus in the Florida and very, very high tourist markets. So going back to one of your original questions, and having seen what I've learned over the last few years, the high year-round tourism is extremely important.
Yep.
You've got to have a reason to have guests showing up throughout the whole year. And there are, from what I can tell, a fairly limited number of places like that throughout the country. Most places have a pretty dramatic seasonality to them. So make sure that that's number one on your list. Number two would be, you've got to confirm that that's a location that's viable, that is also non-restrictive, because counties and cities are obviously cracking down on the short-term rental market.
Right.
And therefore, having that permission slip is essential. You don't want to end up with any type of an agreement that you're really unable to do anything with the property, especially if you're doing arbitrage, because you're committed to an entire lease.
Right.
So those are two very beginner steps in that process. My personal recommendation for anybody that's looking to get involved in the short-term rental market is to get on Facebook and start joining every short-term rental group that they can find.
Okay.
There are some phenomenal groups out there. There's an Airbnb /HomeAway/VRBO group that has tens of thousands of members that I'm a part of. There is the Airbnb automated group, Sean Rocky Geach's group. He also has a terrific YouTube channel that specializes in the arbitrage concept. But again, I cannot emphasize to you enough that while Michael and Katrina have assisted us in realizing that in the early stages of getting into this business model, it does make sense for you to potentially consider the arbitrage concept. A rapid transition away from arbitrage into partnership is by far your best bet. It requires the least amount of money out of pocket. It's the highest, it's the best way to mitigate risk throughout this process, because you can, you again can create a partnership agreement where you're allowing yourself the opportunity to walk away from a deal if for whatever reason suddenly there are restrictions in the area, or if the property can't be rented because of something like a global pandemic. You can say, look, this basically nullifies the agreement between us.
Right. Wow.
And so that's what we've been doing with all of our doors. We don't have a single arbitrage deal, 100% partnership.
Wow. So I'm sure some of your other videos cover this, but I mean, it seems like it's something that I'm unfamiliar with. How do you even kind of go about what are the perks for a landlord? Because I think at least in arbitrage, it seems like one of the more challenging things is getting a landlord to agree to, sublease their unit. This is a step further where they're having to play a little bit more of a role in it as well.
Partnership model, not as much. Either one, arbitrage or partnership, there's really not much the landlord or homeowner is really going to have to be responsible for as far as being involved. Either one is attractive. Your question is valid. What objections might a homeowner have to allowing either a tenant or a partner to run a short-term rental operation from their house? And I think it is fairly commonsensical. I mean, think about it. If I'm a long-term landlord of a property that I've owned for any amount of time, and I'm considering, transitioning into the short-term rental space instead, because I see that there's a higher possible outcome for me, for me to have a short-term rental versus a long-term is usually better for my home.
Right.
The house is being cleaned multiple times a week professionally. Are you a homeowner or a renter now?
Right now I'm renting.
And how many times since you've moved in have you had the house professionally cleaned?
Professionally, we have not had it cleaned once. I mean, we clean it pretty thoroughly ourselves, but
sure.
Yeah.
And I've had great tenants, don't get me wrong. By and large, as a long-term landlord for the last 20 some odd years, I really can't complain much. Only a few incidents that would kind of come to mind. But I regardless of how great my tenants have been, I think the answer is fairly universal in that most long-term tenants aren't necessarily having their my property professionally cleaned on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's a big factor. But beyond that, short-term guests are not real kitchen or appliance heavy, whereas long-term tenants are using the kitchen on a regular basis. People who come to your location to travel, they're generally eating out a lot more often.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that in my short-term rental, it's just not being used often, the kitchen or the appliances. That certainly prevents a lot of wear and tear on those appliances. And I find the replacement of appliances generally is much less frequent on my short-term rental versus long-term rental properties. So if it's explained adequately, the owner of a home really doesn't have too many valid objections that they can lean into. It may be a question that's brought up, and certainly having the right scripting to overcome that is appropriate. And this is why I generally lean into having pre-existing formulas that I just purchase. I'm the type of person that just signs up for people's products, programs, or courses because I want to make sure that I get as many shortcuts as I can. I'm not interested in trying to figure it out for myself. I'd rather just be shown how. There's just too many hard lessons that are easily avoided otherwise. And as long as the cost is, far outweighed by the results, then it's a no-brainer. And like any other ROI. So I'll text you some of those links. You can check out their videos. Those guys this is the thing, like any other industry, you're going to have people that are terrific at it. And you're going to have people that seem like they're just more on the solicitous and hard close side of it. And it's more of a volume orientation. I've purchased multiple courses for this. Michael and Katrina are two that have continuously for 3 years straight demonstrated an intense desire to exceed expectations for the people that have either come in from our channel or that are working with me and them simultaneously. I have a one-on-one coaching program that I've been selling now for almost a decade and a half. And, we end up with a lot of mutual clients. And so I have a lot of people that are going through their course and are working through the short-term rental business development model that they've created. And the results are pretty staggering. One of the more recent conversations that I had was a gentleman that had been operating in their system for a period of 6 months, had 6 deals live, another 3 deals that were being set up and weren't yet live on the platforms. Once those 9 deals were all live, the anticipated net revenues to him were just shy of $80K a month. $80K a month is just shy of $1 million a year. That's a 6-month outcome. To me, that's very hard to recreate in other industries. Yeah. And believe me, I try. I'm looking for that stuff all the time because I'm all about cash flow, which means make more, spend less. And there's a lot more potential on the earn more side of that balance sheet than the spending less side. I love controlling debt. I love minimizing taxes and interest costs, but best case scenario usually results in thousands per month. And when you talk about income, best case scenario is truly as big as your imagination can come up with. Thousands a day is realistic for many of us. So I like to put as much time and energy as I can into the earn more side of this equation than the spend less side, while also obviously optimizing on the spend less side as much as I can without overcommitting too much time to it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.